You stand over the ball, you draw the club back slow, and somehow, before your hands even reach waist height, the shot is already dead. You feel it, don't you? That tiny hitch, that little roll of the wrists. The club goes back wrong, and no matter what you do coming down, you're just trying to rescue a swing that was ruined in the first foot of motion. Here's what almost nobody will tell you. The entire golf swing is decided in the first 18 inches. Not the top, not the downswing, the takeaway. And the way to do it perfectly was written down clearly almost 80 years ago, then quietly buried under a mountain of complicated modern instruction that keeps you paying and keeps you slicing. I found the proof in a book from 1946, written by a man who taught it to thousands, and in the story of a golfer who kept shooting in the 70s after losing a leg. What they knew, you can feel in your own hands today, with nothing but a club you already own and a handkerchief from your drawer. I remember the exact moment I gave up on my swing. It was a Tuesday evening at a public range outside town, the lights buzzing overhead, a bucket of 40 balls beside me, and I had sprayed 39 of them dead right into the net. I stood there thinking, I have been playing this game for 11 years, and I am getting worse. So let me tell you what I did about it, because it changed everything. For most of my adult life, I did what everyone does. I blamed my equipment. I bought a new driver with a name that sounded like a rocket engine. $390. It sliced exactly like my old one. I bought training aids, little plastic gadgets that strap to your arm, straps that connect your elbows, a weighted club that promised to build the perfect motion. I have a drawer full of them. I bet you have a drawer just like it. Then I did the thing you're supposed to do. I paid for lessons. $90 an hour. And the instructor filmed my swing on a tablet, drew red lines all over my body, and started talking about my hip rotation, my spine angle, my wrist hinge on the second parallel, my shallowing move in transition. I nodded like I understood. I did not understand. I went home with 11 things to think about, and I hit the ball worse than before I paid him. And that is the trap. Because here is the question that finally saved me. If the golf swing takes about 1.5 seconds from start to finish, how am I supposed to consciously control 11 different body parts in a second and a half? I can't. Nobody can. Your brain simply cannot fire 11 conscious commands in the time it takes to swing. That's when I started digging backwards instead of forwards. I stopped asking what the newest coach on the internet was selling. I started asking a different question. How did people learn this game before there were tablets and red lines and $300 drivers? How did the men who built their own clubs and played on sheep pastures learn to strike a ball pure? And what I found stopped me cold. The best ball strikers of the old era almost never talked about positions. They talked about one thing over and over: the start, the takeaway, the first move away from the ball. They believed, and they proved on the course, that if the club started back correctly, the rest of the swing organized itself automatically, not with effort, on its own. Let me say that again, because it is the whole secret, and everyone skips past it. They believed the takeaway was not one part of the swing. They believed the takeaway was the swing. Get the first 18 inches right, and the club falls into place at the top by itself. Get it wrong, and you spend the rest of your life making desperate corrections that never quite work. I read that, and I felt something between hope and anger. Hope, because maybe I only had to fix one thing instead of 11. Anger, because if it was that simple, why had nobody ever told me? So I had to find out what the old masters actually meant by a correct takeaway. And the deeper I went, the clearer it became that we lost something real. The phrase they used was the one-piece takeaway. It sounds simple, it is simple, but the meaning has been twisted and watered down until most golfers today think they're doing it when they're doing the exact opposite. Here is what one piece truly means. In the first stretch of the backswing, your hands, your arms, your shoulders, and the club all move away from the ball together, as a single connected unit. Your wrists do not roll. Your hands do not lift. Your arms do not pull the club inside. Everything moves as one piece, turning back off the ball like a gate swinging on a hinge, with your chest doing the work and your hands doing almost nothing. Now think about what most people actually do, and what I did for 11 years. The very first thing my hands wanted to do was snatch the club back and roll it open. Little flick of the wrists, club whipping to the inside, face fanning open. It felt powerful. It felt like I was loading up, and it was the source of every bad shot I ever hit. The great English golfer Harry Vardon, who won the Open Championship 6 times between 1896 and 1914, wrote about this over a century ago. Vardon was the man who made the game modern. The grip most of the world uses today is named after him. And when Vardon described the start of the swing, he described a slow, smooth, wide movement of the club away from the ball, with the hands staying quiet and the whole body beginning to turn together. No snatch, no sudden wrist roll. He called for the club to be taken back so smoothly that a glass of water balanced on your wrists would not spill. That image stuck with me, a glass of water that does not spill, because it tells you exactly how gentle and how connected that first move is supposed to be. Nothing about it is fast, nothing about it is handsy, and it worked. Vardon was known for hitting the same shot over and over with a monotony that bored the crowds. He was so accurate that a story went around that if he played a course in the morning, he had to avoid his own divot marks in the afternoon because he kept landing in the same spot. That kind of repeating accuracy does not come from a complicated swing. It comes from a simple, repeatable start. So why did we lose it? Why did I spend $90 an hour to learn 11 things when a man in 1900 was teaching one? Here is where it stops being an accident. Somewhere along the way, teaching golf became an industry, and a simple truth is very hard to sell. You cannot charge a man for lessons every week if you tell him the fix is one move he can groove in his living room. You cannot sell a drawer full of gadgets if the answer is that his hands are doing too much and need to do less. Complexity is profitable. Simplicity is not. Think about it from the other side of the counter. The high-speed cameras, the launch monitors, the multi-week packages, the training aids with the rocket engine names. Every one of those things depends on you believing that your swing is a machine with dozens of independent parts, each one needing separate attention and separate money. The idea that the whole thing could organize itself off one good takeaway is bad for business, so it got pushed to the back of the shelf. Not banned, just buried under noise. And I fell for it. For over a decade I fed that machine. $390 for the driver, $90 an hour for the red lines. Call it a couple $1,000s, easy, chasing a fix that a 6-time Open champion gave away for free before my grandfather was born. But knowing the history did not fix my swing by itself. I still had to feel it. I still had to take that idea of one connected piece and put it into my own hands. And that turned out to be harder than it sounds, because my hands had 11 years of bad habits burned into them. Maybe you think you're too new to the game, or too stiff, or too old, or that this is the kind of thing that only works for people with natural talent and flexible spines. Maybe you don't even have a range nearby. I want to talk to you specifically for the next few minutes, because what I'm about to show you needs no range, no talent, no lessons, and no money. You can do it standing in your kitchen tonight while the coffee brews. Here is the first thing I did, and it cost nothing. I took a head cover, the little sock that comes on your driver, and I tucked it up under my lead armpit, the left armpit for a right-handed player. Then I made slow takeaways, just the first 2 feet of the backswing, trying to keep that head cover pinned in place. Why does this work? Because the moment your arms disconnect from your body, the moment your hands snatch the club up and away on their own, the head cover falls out. It drops to the floor and tells you instantly that you broke the one piece. When your arms and chest move together, connected, the head cover stays trapped. You get real feedback on every single rep, and you don't need a coach to tell you whether you did it right. The floor tells you. I stood in my kitchen and did that for 10 minutes a night. No ball. No swing thoughts about hips or spine angles. Just keep the sock in place through the first move. Within a week, my body started to understand what connected felt like. It felt slower. It felt wider. It felt honestly like I wasn't doing enough, because I was so used to that violent little wrist snatch. Here is the second thing, and it's even simpler. Grab a club, or a broom, or a yardstick, anything with a shaft. Set up like you're going to hit a ball. Now before you move anything, notice where the club is pointing. Then take it back slowly until the shaft is parallel to the ground, roughly hip height. Stop there, freeze, and check one thing and one thing only. Is the club pointing straight back along your target line, parallel to it, with the toe of the club pointing up toward the sky? If the club is pointing behind you, way to the inside, and the face is hanging open toward the ground, you just found your slice. That is the snatch. That is the roll. That is 11 years of my life right there. If the club is parallel to the target line with the toe up, you have made a one-piece takeaway, and you have put yourself in a position that thousands of dollars of lessons are trying and failing to teach. Do this in a mirror. Do it in the reflection of a window at night, 10 slow reps. Take it back, freeze at hip height, check the toe, come back down. You are teaching your body a position without a single thought about your body, just the club. And that is the trick the old teachers understood that the modern machine forgot. You don't fix the swing by thinking about the body. You fix the swing by controlling the club, and the body follows. I need you to hear this, because I know the doubt that lives in the back of your mind. You think the reason you can't strike the ball is something wrong with you. Your coordination, your age, your build. It isn't. I promise you it isn't. It is one habit in the first 18 inches, and it is fixable at home, tonight, for free. I am living proof, and I was the most hopeless slicer at that buzzing public range. So I started experimenting. And the first breakthrough was so small and so cheap it almost made me laugh. Now, before I show you that first drill, let me be straight with you about something. That snatch at the top of your takeaway, the wrist roll, the club whipping inside, that is one flaw in one part of the swing. There are others waiting for you further down the line, and I know that, because I hit every one of them. That is exactly why I finally put everything I dug up into one place, the complete swing system, an instant download of more than 420 pages. It walks you from your very first setup, grip, posture, the foundation 90% of beginners skip, all the way to the hidden mechanics that break your scoring plateaus. It teaches you to read your own miss, so you can diagnose exactly what went wrong on every single shot, without a coach and a tablet. And it builds a real, connected swing off the 7 core fundamentals, instead of leaving you collecting loose tips forever. Here is how you check whether any of this is real before you spend a dime. Tonight, do the drill I am about to show you. Freeze at hip height and look at that club face. If you can feel the difference in 10 quiet reps, you already know the plain method works, and that is the whole system, just deeper. The fastest way to get the books is to scan the QR code right there on your screen, or go to the link in the description, or the pinned comment. And because it is a digital download, there is nothing to wait for and nothing to ship. You have it in your hands the same night. Right after this, I am going to hand you the exact cheap little drill that gave me my first breakthrough, the one that cost nothing. Now maybe you're sitting there thinking this is not for you. But here is where my own story took a turn I did not expect. Because I grooved that connected takeaway, I kept the head cover pinned, I checked the toe in the mirror, and my ball striking got better. A lot better. And then it stalled. I hit a wall. And figuring out why I hit that wall led me to the deepest secret of all, the one that finally made it click. The problem was this. I could make a perfect takeaway in slow motion, in my kitchen, in front of a mirror, with no ball. But the second I stood over a real golf ball with a real shot on the line, my hands would tense up and take over again. All that mechanical practice went out the window under the slightest pressure, and I realized that positions alone were not enough. A position is a photograph. A swing is a motion. You cannot build a flowing motion out of a series of frozen photographs. That sent me back into the old books, and this time I found a man named Percy Boomer. Percy Boomer was a professional who taught in France in the early part of the 20th century, at a club near Paris, and in 1946 he published a book called On Learning Golf. This is the book I mentioned at the start. It is one of the most respected instruction books ever written, and yet most golfers today have never heard the man's name. When I finally got a copy and read it, I understood why so many great players quietly treated it like a treasure. Boomer did not teach positions, he taught feel. His entire method was built on the idea that you cannot control your swing by thinking about where your arms are. You control it by feel, by sensation, by what he called the feeling of the correct motion stored in your body. And he was ferocious on one point in particular. He believed the hands and wrists were the great destroyers of the golf swing. He taught his students to feel as though the swing was controlled from the center of the body, from the core, and that the hands simply held on and transmitted that turning. He had a phrase that changed how I stood over the ball. He said you should feel like you are swinging inside a barrel. Your hips can turn, but they cannot sway side to side, because the barrel holds them. That single image did more for my takeaway than every red line an instructor ever drew on a tablet. Because when I felt that my center was turning in place, connected, my hands finally stopped trying to do the job. The turn took the club back, not the hands. And Boomer said something else that I have never forgotten. He wrote that the reason so many golfers never improve is that they are taught with their heads instead of their bodies. They fill their minds with mechanical instructions, and the mechanical mind kills the natural motion. He was warning about this in 1946, before there was a single high-speed camera or a single launch monitor. Imagine what he would say about the 11 swing thoughts I carried home from that $90 lesson. So now I had two pieces. From the old champions, I had the shape of the correct takeaway, one connected piece, wide and slow, toe up at hip height. From Boomer, I had the idea that it must be driven by feel from the center, not manufactured by the hands. But I still had that gap between my calm kitchen practice and my tense, handsy swing over a real ball. I needed something that would teach my hands to relax and let the club head do the work. And that final piece came from the most remarkable golfer you have probably never heard of. His name was Ernest Jones, and his story is the reason I believe this knowledge was worth digging for. Ernest Jones was an English professional golfer. He was good, on his way to being very good, playing to a professional standard as a young man. Then came the First World War. In 1916, fighting in France, Ernest Jones was badly wounded, and the surgeons had to amputate his right leg below the knee. He was 29 years old. Now think about what a golf swing demands from the legs. The turn, the balance, the drive off the ground, the weight shift. A man who has lost a leg has every reason to believe his golfing life is over. And here is the part that gave me chills when I read it. Later that same year, still recovering, balancing on one leg, sometimes on crutches, Ernest Jones went out and played a round of golf and shot an 83. On one leg. And then, not long after, on one leg, he shot a 72. Even par, or close to it, on one good leg. How is that even possible? Because Ernest Jones had figured out the one thing that mattered more than everything else. If he could not rely on a powerful body turn and a strong leg drive, he had to rely on the pure swinging of the club head itself. He could not muscle the ball. He had no leg to muscle it with. So he learned to let the weight of the club head do the work, swinging freely, with the hands quiet and passive, simply holding on and directing that swinging weight. He was so struck by what he had discovered that he gave up tournament golf and became a teacher. He moved to the United States, set up in New York, and spent decades teaching one single idea to thousands of students. His famous phrase, the thing he built his whole life around, was this: swing the club head. Not the body, not the arms, not the hands. Swing the club head and let everything else respond to it. He wrote it all down in a book called Swinging into Golf, published in 1937. When I read his story, I finally understood the wall I had hit. I was still trying to place the club with my hands. Ernest Jones proved you don't place it, you swing it. The club head has weight. If you let that weight swing freely, it pulls your hands and arms into the correct one-piece motion automatically. The takeaway becomes perfect Not because you position it, but because you let the heavy end of the club lead the way while your hands stay soft. And here is the drill he used to teach it. This is the secret I promised you. This is the thing I found buried in a book from 1937 that no expensive coach ever showed me, and it cost you nothing but a handkerchief. Ernest Jones would take an ordinary pocket knife, a jackknife, and he would tie it to the corner of a handkerchief. Then he would hold the other corner of the handkerchief between his fingers, letting the knife dangle at the bottom like a weight on the end of a string, and he would swing it, gently, back and forth, letting that little weight swing on the cloth. Now here is the genius of it. A handkerchief has no stiffness. You cannot force it. You cannot manipulate a limp piece of cloth with your wrists, because the moment you try to steer it or flick it, the whole thing collapses and the weight stops swinging. The only way to make the knife swing smoothly back and forth is to let the weight itself do the work, and to move your hand in a calm, rhythmic arc that lets the weight build its own momentum. The handkerchief physically forbids the exact fault that ruins your takeaway. It will not let your hands take over. He would have his students swing that weighted handkerchief until they felt it, until they felt the weight loading at the bottom, swinging back, floating to the top, and swinging down again, all from the momentum of the weight and the rhythm of the hand. And then he would put a golf club in their hands and tell them to feel the exact same thing. Swing the club head like it is that knife on the cloth. Let its weight swing. Keep your hands soft. Do not steer it. Do not flick it. Let it swing. The first time I tried it, standing in my kitchen with a paring knife tied to a dish towel, I felt something I had never felt in 11 years of golf. I felt the head of the club in my mind as a weight I could let swing instead of a thing I had to force. I took that feeling to the range with a real club, and for the first time, my takeaway started itself with the weight of the club head, one connected piece, slow and wide, toe pointing up, hands as quiet as they had ever been. And the ball. The ball came off the face with a sound I did not recognize as my own, a soft, compressed click instead of that thin, glancing scrape. Straight. Not perfect every time, I am not going to lie to you and say I became a professional overnight. But straight and solid and repeatable in a way that 11 years and a couple $1,000s had never given me. That is the hero's journey of this little piece of knowledge. It existed. A 6-time Open champion swung so smoothly a glass of water would not spill. A teacher in France in 1946 wrote down that the hands are the destroyers and the center is the master. And a one-legged golfer who shot even par on crutches spent his whole life proving that if you simply swing the weight of the club head and let your hands stay soft, the perfect takeaway happens by itself. They kept it alive, they wrote it down, and then the machine of modern instruction, with its red lines and its rocket engine drivers and its $90 hours, quietly pushed it to the back of the shelf, because a simple truth you can practice for free is very bad for business. Now you hold it. You can tie a weight to a handkerchief tonight and feel exactly what Ernest Jones felt on one leg over 100 years ago. You can pin a headcover under your arm and learn connection for nothing. You can freeze at hip height in front of a dark window and check that toe pointing at the sky. 3 things. No lessons, no gadgets, no cameras, and every one of them aims at the same forgotten truth. The swing is decided in the first 18 inches, and the first 18 inches are ruled not by your hands but by the swinging weight of the club head. What you just recovered is not a golf tip. It is a way of thinking that was deliberately made to feel too simple to be true, so that you would keep paying to be told it was complicated. If you are the kind of person who has always suspected that the useful, honest answer to a problem gets buried on purpose, while the expensive, complicated version gets sold back to you again and again, then you already understand what this channel is really about. It is not about golf. It is about taking back the plain, powerful knowledge that somebody profited from you never having. So let me ask you something specific, and I really do want you to answer. When you take the club back right now, be honest. Do your hands snatch it to the inside and roll the face open? Or do you already move it in one connected piece? Tell me in the comments which one you are, the snatcher or the swinger. And if you go tie a knife to a handkerchief tonight and swing it, come back and tell me what you felt. I read them, and this one I want to hear about. And if you believe, like I do, that the best answers in this world were figured out long ago by people with no money and a lot of common sense, then come with us, because we are digging these methods back up one at a time. Next, I am going after the forgotten secret of the short game. The reason the old players could stop a ball dead on hard ground with a swing so small it looked like nothing, a move that has almost completely vanished from the modern game. You are not going to believe who buried it, or how simple it turns out to be. Now, this video showed you why the takeaway matters, but inside the Old Ways Almanac, you get the full drill, picking up right where we stopped. And if something isn't clicking, you can ask me directly. A real person, me, answers you myself. You won't be doing this alone either. Folks like you are already in there with us. Just point your phone's camera at the code on your screen, and you can cancel any time. Now that your takeaway feels smooth, there's one move that changes everything on the way down. Get this right, and you'll finally hit the ball with real power. Let me show you next. It's starting right here.